This happened to me when I was 26 years old and had just started my first job as an architect. It was the day before my birthday and I had just moved into my first apartment. I decided to go back to bed and try to sleep, but this time I turned on all the lights and left the door open. Despite all this, I still had to go to work. It was my first day after all, so I got up and did my best to put on a brave face. Went to the restroom and washed my hands in preparation for eating, but as soon as I stepped out, I heard someone say, "Hey, isn't she the girl who lives in apartment 404? I turned to see 3 of my coworkers staring at me, their eyes wide with fear. "Yeah," one of them said slowly, "the one who screamed all night long and didn't even bother to call the cops." I immediately jumped out of bed and turned on all the lights. I could hear the commotion going on next door and my heart was pounding in my chest. Just then, I noticed something strange. There was a thin sliver of light coming from under my bedroom door. I slowly got up and walked towards it, my mind racing. Could it be? Was someone really in my apartment? My heart skipped a beat and I tried to speak, but no words came out. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy and weak. My boyfriend's eyes filled with tears as he spoke. "You were found unconscious in your apartment. Police are still looking for the person who attacked you, but they haven't had any luck so far." He took my hand in his and squeezed it gently. "Are you okay?" As I opened the door and stepped inside, I could smell a faint, musty odor. As I did, the dog's eyes flashed open and it let out a low growl. I could feel my hands shaking as I opened the box. Inside, I found a small leather-bound journal. I opened it and began to read. I turned around and saw that it was standing right behind me. Its eyes were glowing red in the darkness and its teeth were bared in a vicious snarl. I screamed and ran, but the dog was faster. It lunged at me and knocked me to the ground. I could feel its hot, fetid breath on my face as it whispered in my ear, "Let me in. I want to play." And then everything went black. My eyes adjusted to the dim light and I began to make out the shapes of my furniture. Then I saw it. She had written about a black dog that had been following her, watching her every move. One day, the dog had broken into her apartment and attacked her. She had survived the attack, but she had never been the same again. She wrote about how she could feel the dog's presence in her dreams, how it whispered to her in the darkness, begging her to let it in. The last entry was dated 1 year before my move-in date, and it simply read, "It's here. Let me in. I want to play." In the corner of my eye, I caught sight of a large black dog. It was lying on the floor, fast asleep. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Was it the same dog that had attacked me? Wanted to tell him that I was fine, that it was all just a bad dream, but I couldn't. I could still feel the pain in my leg and the terror of the attack was still fresh in my mind. As I looked down, I could see that my leg was covered in blood and bandages. I was in a hospital bed and my boyfriend was sitting next to me, his eyes filled with concern. As I did, the sliver of light grew wider and I could hear a faint scratching sound coming from the other side. "Let me in," it rasped, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Let me in and I won't hurt you." I was too afraid to go home, so I stayed with my boyfriend. Maybe I could find some clues as to what had happened to me. I was still nervous, but I knew that I had to try. I got dressed and went with my boyfriend to my apartment. Every night I could feel the presence of the dog in my nightmares, its glowing red eyes burning into my soul. I was seeing a therapist to try to cope with the trauma, but it was difficult to open up to her when I didn't even know what had happened to me. All I had was the vague memory of a black dog and the feeling that I was being hunted. I screamed and stumbled back. The door slammed shut and I could hear the scratching begin again. I ran to the window and looked out. The dog was gone. I quickly dialed my boyfriend's number, but he didn't pick up. I tried again, but still no answer. I was on my own. With trembling hands, I stepped into the hallway and gasped. The door opened slowly and I could see the dog standing in the doorway. It was closer now, its eyes boring into mine. "Let me in," it rasped again, and I could feel my voice catching in my throat. "Please," it begged, "just let me in and I'll protect you." I knew it was a trick, but I was too scared to resist. I slowly opened the door and the dog slipped inside. There, standing in front of my closed bedroom door, was a large black dog. Its fur was matted and dirty and its eyes glowed an eerie red in the darkness. I could hear the scratching sound again, this time louder and more insistent. The dog whined softly and I could feel my heart sinking in my chest. This wasn't just a stray animal. This was a demon. They must have seen the terror on my face because they quickly tried to backpedal. "Oh, we didn't mean to upset you," one of them stammered. We just heard a rumor and we thought it was true." They apologized again and hurried away. I could feel the hot blood gushing from the wound in my leg and I collapsed to the floor. The last thing I remember is the dog licking my face. I drove to work in silence, my mind replaying every terrifying thought I had the night before over and over again. Apartment 404. That's where I live. I only moved in the day before and I hadn't even changed the locks yet. What if someone had gotten into my apartment while I was at work and was hiding in my closet or under my bed? When I arrived, my boss was waiting for me outside and he welcomed me to the team. When I arrived, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't focus on my work and I kept finding excuses to leave the office early. Each time I did, I would drive straight home and bolt the door behind me. I tried to keep busy by cooking dinner and watching TV, but nothing could take my mind off the image of someone breaking into my apartment and watching me while I slept. I fumbled with my keys, trying to get them to fit in the lock, but my hands were shaking so badly that I could barely move them. Finally, I got inside and I quickly scanned the room, my eyes searching for any sign of a break-in. But everything seemed to be in order. The couch was in the same position as I'd left it and my laptop was still on the table. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and tried to calm myself down. I told myself that it was probably just a bunch of nonsense. Someone had said something to these people and they believed it without thinking twice. Surely they wouldn't be so stupid as to actually break into my apartment. I managed a weak smile and tried to shake off the fear that was still lingering in my bones. I told myself that there was no way that anything could get me in that state, but I ended up feeling even more uneasy than before. We worked on several projects together and I even cracked a few jokes here and there. It was a good day overall, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Whenever I looked around, I felt like there was a pair of eyes boring into mine, but when I turned to look directly at the source of my fear, I saw nothing but friendly faces. At this point, I was desperate, so I called my boyfriend who lived close by. He was there in a few minutes and he stayed with me until the sun came up. I felt so stupid for being scared, but he didn't make fun of me or anything. He just held me and told me that everything was going to be okay. And it was thanks to him that I was able to fall asleep at all. I was so excited to finally be out on my own, but I was also a little bit nervous. It's normal to feel that way, right? But for some reason, those nerves were amplified that night and it wouldn't let me sleep. I kept tossing and turning in bed, and the more I tried to relax, the more I panicked. I eventually got up and sat on the couch to watch some TV, but nothing really helped. The apartment seemed to be getting colder too. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I tried to push these thoughts out of my mind, but the longer the night went on, the more paranoid I became. When I woke up the next morning, my eyes were all puffy and red from crying and my body was sore from all the tossing and turning I did during the night. As the day wore on, I found myself getting more and more comfortable around my new colleagues. It was about lunchtime when things took a turn for the worse. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. Did they really think that I was crazy? Had my screams carried all the way downstairs? Then it hit me. As soon as I finished lunch, I raced home, my foot heavy on the gas pedal. But as the day wore on and the sun began to set, my fear returned with a vengeance. One evening I was awoken in the middle of the night by what sounded like screams in the next apartment. I reached out and pushed the door open, and then it spoke. Suddenly, the doorknob began to turn. I pressed my back against the wall and waited. I screamed as it lunged at me, its sharp teeth bared in a vicious snarl. I awoke to the sound of sirens and the blinding lights of the emergency vehicles flashing in my eyes. What happened? I rasped, my voice hoarse from disuse. As the days passed, my physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars remained. One day, while I was talking to my boyfriend, it hit me. My apartment. I hadn't checked on it since the attack. When we arrived, I could see that the door had been repaired and the lock had been changed. I took a deep breath and tried to relax. Then I noticed something else. There was a small wooden box at the foot of the bed. I walked over and picked it up. The journal contained the story of a young woman who had lived in the apartment B. For me, as I read the final words, I could feel the dog's hot breath on my neck.